My girlfriend smirked. I don't owe you explanations for where I sleep. That's not how adult relationships work. After another overnight disappearance, I said, perfect. Apartment before sunrise, and left one note. Hours later, someone from her circle revealed why I'm Nash, 31M. Work as fleet maintenance supervisor for a delivery company here in Dallas. Been dating Briar, 28F, for about 18 months now. She works as social media coordinator at some marketing agency, decent job, smart woman. Or at least I thought we had our shit figured out. We've been living together in my apartment for about 8 months. Things were solid for most of our relationship. Normal couple stuff. Some disagreements, but nothing major. Generally felt like we were building something real together. Then about 6 weeks ago, something shifted. Briar started having these work friend hangouts that would go until morning. Not occasionally, like twice a week. She'd text me around 9 p.m. saying she was going out with colleagues, then radio silence until she'd roll in around noon the next day looking like she'd been up all night. At first, I didn't think much of it. People blow off steam, coworkers grab drinks, whatever. But when it became this regular pattern of overnight disappearances, I started feeling weird about it. Not jealous exactly, just confused. We live together. We're supposed to be building something serious. Staying out all night twice a week without any real communication felt off. So I brought it up. Tried to be reasonable about it. Hey, I know you're having fun with your work friends, but the overnight thing has me feeling a little disconnected from us. Can we talk about what's going on? Her response, I don't need to check in with you like I'm a teenager with a curfew. Fair enough. I wasn't asking for check-ins, just basic communication about why she was staying out overnight on weeknights when we have a shared life and shared space. I'm not trying to control your social life. I just want to understand what's happening with us when you're gone 12 hours without any real communication. That's when she said the thing that changed everything. Nash, if I want to spend the night out with my friends, I don't owe you an explanation. I'm an adult woman with my own life, and I don't have to account for every hour to my boyfriend. That's not how healthy relationships work. I sat there for a minute processing that. Then I said, you're right. Neither do I. She looked at me like I'd said something crazy. What's that supposed to mean? It means you just established the communication rules for our relationship. If committed partners don't owe each other explanations about overnight absences, then that applies to both of us. She laughed, but not in a good way. You're being dramatic. This is completely different. How? Because I'm actually going out with friends from work. You're just trying to prove some kind of point. So your overnight absences are legitimate because you have reasons, but mine would be illegitimate because I'd be making a point about equal treatment? She stared at me. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. The conversation ended with her grabbing her purse and announcing she was going out again. Maybe when you're done being petty, we can have an adult conversation about this. She left around 8 p.m., texted me at 10. Staying at my friend's place tonight. Don't wait up. That's when something clicked for me. This wasn't about her needing space or independence. This was about establishing different rules for different people. She wanted the security of a committed relationship with the freedom of a single person, while expecting me to provide stability without expecting mutual consideration. I thought about my mom, who spent my childhood prioritizing men who demanded accommodation while giving nothing back. Guys who'd show up when they felt like it, expect dinner and attention, then disappear for days without explanation. I learned early that words matter less than actions, and actions tell you everything about someone's real priorities. So I decided to follow Briar's logic exactly as she'd stated it. I called my buddy Lane and asked if he could help me move some stuff the next morning. Then I called my coworker Crew, who's been through his own relationship disaster recently, and asked if he could bring his truck. Spent the night packing everything I owned, methodically, quietly. Clothes, electronics, furniture. I'd brought to the relationship, kitchen stuff that was mine. Took my name off the lease with an emergency rental office call. Apparently you can do that at 2 a.m. if you're willing to pay extra fees. Called the utility companies and transferred everything out of my name. Cable, electric, internet. Amazing how much bureaucracy you can accomplish when you're motivated and can't sleep anyway. By 6 a.m., the apartment looked like it had when I'd first seen it. Clean, empty, Just Briar's stuff arranged exactly how she'd want it without my input cluttering things up. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Out indefinitely. No explanation needed. Then I left. I'm writing this from Crew's spare room, where I'm staying until I find my own place. I turned my phone off around noon yesterday after it started buzzing constantly. Turned it back on this morning to find 47 text messages and 12 missed calls. The texts start around noon when she apparently got home, and they're educational. Where the fuck are you? This isn't funny, Nash. Call me back right now. You can't just disappear without explanation. I know you're getting these messages. This is childish and manipulative. Answer your fucking phone. We need to talk about this like adults. The irony is apparently completely lost on her. The last message, sent around 3 a.m. last night. I can't believe you'd abandon our relationship without even trying to work things out. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm following the rules she established. If committed partners don't owe each other explanations about overnight absences, then I don't owe her an explanation about my overnight absence either. The difference is, she expected me to be available as her emotional and financial security while she tested boundaries with her work friends. I'm just applying her logic consistently. Maybe she's right that I'm being dramatic, but I'm done with relationships that have different rules for different people. Either we're partners who communicate about things that affect our shared life, or we're independent adults who don't owe each other explanations about anything. She chose option 2. I'm just honoring her choice. Update 1. Briar has been reaching out to every mutual friend we have, trying to get them to locate me and convince me to talk like adults. The irony of demanding adult conversation from someone who just spent 6 weeks avoiding adult conversation is apparently lost on everyone. Our friend group is basically split down the middle. Half think I'm being extreme, half think she had it coming. Lane, who helped me move, has been fielding calls all week. According to him, Briar's story is that I disappeared without warning and abandoned the relationship over a minor disagreement about social boundaries. Minor disagreement. That's what she's calling 6 weeks of overnight absences, followed by declaring she doesn't owe me basic communication about our shared life. Lane's been responding exactly how I asked him to. Nash is following the communication rules Briar established. If she has concerns about his whereabouts, she should probably discuss that with him directly. But he won't answer his phone. Did she answer hers when he had concerns? Apparently this conversation ends pretty quickly after that. Crew, my coworker who helped with the move, has been more direct with people. He went through his own relationship disaster last year where his ex-wife spent months finding herself, while expecting him to maintain their household and be emotionally available whenever she felt like connecting. Nash isn't playing games, he told our mutual friend Jake. He's just not accepting different rules for different people anymore. The most interesting conversation was with Quinn, Briar's younger sister, who called me directly yesterday. Nash, I need to tell you something about what's been going on with Briar. Quinn's always been straight with me, never got involved in relationship drama, so I listened. The work friends thing? It's not just work friends. There are guys from her office involved, and Briar's been testing boundaries. She told me she wanted to see how much you'd tolerate before you'd say something. I asked her what she meant by testing boundaries. She's been staying at Jake Morrison's apartment. He's the new guy in her department, like 24 or 25. Not necessarily sleeping with him, but definitely using the overnight stays to see if you'd get jealous or controlling. Testing boundaries. Like our relationship was some kind of psychological experiment. She expected you to get upset, demand explanations, maybe even show up at her work or something. When you just accepted it and stopped asking questions, she got frustrated. That's when she made that speech about not owing you explanations. What was she trying to accomplish? I think she wanted to feel like you cared enough to fight for the relationship, but she also wanted to maintain plausible deniability about what she was actually doing. Like she could test your boundaries while claiming independence if you called her on it. Quinn paused. But then you just left. And now she's freaking out because she thought you'd chase her, not actually follow through on the independence thing. So the overnight stays were deliberately provocative. The "I don't owe you explanations" speech was designed to make me pursue her while she maintained the option to call me controlling if I actually demanded accountability. She wanted traditional boyfriend behavior, concern, pursuit, emotional availability, while claiming modern girlfriend privileges, complete autonomy without consequences. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think you called her bluff perfectly. She set up a game where she thought she controlled all the outcomes. You just showed her what actual independence looks like. Quinn's right. This wasn't about Briar needing space or wanting to maintain friendships. This was about establishing a relationship dynamic where she could do whatever she wanted while I provided security and stability. The overnight stays were bait. The explanation refusal was a test, and my acceptance was supposed to be evidence that I was either weak enough to accept disrespect or controlling enough to start arguments she could use to justify her behavior. Instead, I just took her at her word and applied her logic consistently. I'm still staying at Crew's place looking at apartments this weekend. Found a decent one-bedroom closer to work that I can afford easily without splitting costs with someone who views our relationship as an autonomy experiment. Haven't responded to any of Briar's messages, haven't taken her calls, haven't engaged with the mutual friend outreach campaign. If she wants to communicate, she knows where I work. But she'd have to actually show up and have a direct conversation instead of managing the situation through proxies. That would require the kind of straightforward communication she spent 6 weeks avoiding. My phone's been quieter since yesterday. Either she's getting tired of the no-response pattern, or she's realized that demanding explanations from someone after declaring that explanations aren't owed makes her look ridiculous. Crew asked me yesterday if I miss her. Honest answer, I miss who I thought she was. But I don't miss the constant underlying tension of trying to figure out what the rules were in a relationship where they kept changing based on what was convenient for her. For the first time in weeks, I'm not checking my phone constantly, not wondering where my girlfriend is at midnight, not trying to decode whether her communication patterns mean anything significant about our relationship. Turns out, following someone's stated preferences exactly as they expressed them is pretty peaceful. Update 2. I've been staying at Crew's place for a week now, looking at apartments, generally getting my life reorganized without the constant background stress of trying to navigate someone else's boundary experiments. Work's been normal. Fleet maintenance doesn't care about your relationship drama. Trucks break down on schedule regardless of your personal life. Plus, physical work has been good for processing everything that happened. Yesterday around lunch, I was under the hood of a delivery van when someone behind me said, "We need to talk." Briar had shown up at my workplace. First time I'd seen her since the night she left to stay at her friend's place. I finished what I was doing, wiped my hands, and looked at her. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping well, which probably matched how I'd looked during those 6 weeks of overnight disappearances. "Okay," I said. "Talk." "Not here. Somewhere private." I told her we could sit in the break room, but that was as private as it was going to get during my workday. She followed me inside, sat down across from me at the plastic table, and immediately started with, "I can't believe you've been avoiding me for a week." "I haven't been avoiding you. I've been unavailable, just like you were unavailable for 6 weeks. That's completely different." "How?" "Because I was dealing with work stress and needed space to figure things out. You disappeared to prove a point." I asked her what point she thought I was proving. "That you can be just as inconsiderate as me when you want to be." Interesting. So she was acknowledging that her behavior had been inconsiderate. "I thought you said partners don't owe each other explanations about overnight absences." "I didn't mean you could just move out without saying anything." "What did you mean?" Long pause. "I meant you should trust me enough not to interrogate me every time I go out with friends." "I never interrogated you. I asked for basic communication about overnight stays in our shared apartment." "Same thing." "No, it's not. Interrogation is demanding details about private conversations and personal activities. Communication is sharing information that affects your partner's life." She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Where have you been staying?" "Why do you need to know?" "Because we live together and I've been worried about you." "Do you see the irony here?" "What irony?" I explained, as simply as possible, that she was demanding the exact type of communication she'd declared unnecessary. She wanted to know where I'd been, who I'd been staying with, why I hadn't been in touch, all the things she'd refused to provide when I'd had the same concerns. "That's different, Nash. I wasn't disappearing. I was being social." "You were staying overnight twice a week without explanation. How was that not disappearing?" "Because I told you I was going out with work friends." And I left you a note saying I was out indefinitely. Same level of information. The conversation continued like this for 20 minutes. She wanted me to acknowledge that my leaving without explanation was cruel and unreasonable, while simultaneously defending her 6 weeks of leaving without explanation as normal and healthy. Finally, she tried a different approach. Look, maybe I could have communicated better about the work stuff, but what you did was extreme. You don't end a relationship by just disappearing. I didn't end anything. I followed the communication standards you established. I never said you could move out without talking to me first. You said committed partners don't owe each other explanations about overnight absences. Moving out is just a really long overnight absence. You're twisting my words. I'm applying them consistently. That's when she got angry. Really angry. You're being cruel, Nash. You know this isn't what I meant, and you're hiding behind technicalities because you want to punish me. What did you mean? I meant you should give me space to maintain my independence without making it into a relationship crisis. And what about my independence? What about it? If you get to maintain independence through overnight absences without explanation, why don't I get the same option? Because you're doing it to be vindictive. How do you know my motivations any better than I knew yours? She didn't have an answer for that. I told her I needed to get back to work. She asked when we could continue the conversation. When you're ready to have the same communication standards for both of us. What does that mean? It means if you want me to explain my choices, you need to be willing to explain yours. If you want consideration for your independence, you need to show consideration for mine. She left after that, but not before saying she'd never expected this kind of cruelty from me. Crew, who'd been watching from across the shop, came over after she left. How'd that go? About like you'd expect. She wants explanations about my behavior while defending her right not to provide explanations about hers. Think she gets it now? I think she gets that I'm not going to accept different rules for different people. Whether she's willing to have a relationship with equal standards is up to her. I'm signing the lease on that apartment this weekend. 1 bedroom, decent neighborhood, 10 minutes closer to work. Space that's mine, where I don't have to wonder if my partner is coming home or testing boundaries with coworkers. Maybe Briar will decide she wants a relationship with consistent communication standards. Maybe she won't. Either way, I'm done with the uncertainty that comes from trying to navigate someone else's boundary experiments. Turns out, once you stop accepting double standards, everything gets a lot simpler. Final update. Final update on the girlfriend who said partners don't owe each other explanations, so I applied that logic by moving out without explanation. It's been 2 weeks since our conversation at my work, and I've been settling into my new place. Single-bedroom apartment with a kitchen that actually gets natural light and a balcony where I can drink coffee without wondering if my partner is coming home or conducting relationship experiments. The resolution came from an unexpected source: Briar's work friends. I was grabbing lunch near my old neighborhood yesterday when I ran into Jake Morrison, the guy Quinn mentioned, the one whose apartment Briar had been staying at during her overnight independence demonstrations. Jake's about 24, new to her company, seems like a decent enough kid. He approached me looking uncomfortable. Hey, are you Nash, Briar's boyfriend? Ex-boyfriend, I corrected. Man, I need to tell you something about what was happening with those overnight stays. I told him he didn't owe me any explanations. I'd gotten a pretty clear picture of the situation already. No, but you need to know this wasn't what you think. She wasn't cheating or anything like that. She was testing you. I asked him what he meant. She told me and a few other people from work that she was training you to not be controlling. Said most guys get possessive when their girlfriends have male friends, and she was teaching you to be secure enough to handle her independence. Training me. Like I was a dog learning not to bark when she left the house. She said you'd been getting jealous and asking too many questions about her social life, so she was showing you that she could stay out without it being a big deal. The overnight thing was supposed to prove you trusted her. I asked if she'd mentioned that I'd never actually tried to control her social life, just asked for basic communication about overnight absences. She said you were being indirect about wanting to control her, like asking for communication was really asking for permission to veto her plans. So in Briar's interpretation, requesting information about overnight stays was actually attempted control, and her refusing to provide information was actually teaching me to be a better boyfriend. What changed, I asked. When you stopped asking questions, she got frustrated. She told us you'd gotten weird and distant, like you didn't care what she did anymore. Did she want me to care? She wanted you to care but not control. But I think she also wanted you to chase her a little, like show that you were worried about losing her. Jake looked uncomfortable. The overnight stays were supposed to make you jealous enough to fight for the relationship, but not so jealous that you'd actually try to stop her. I stared at him. She wanted me to be jealous but not controlling, worried but not demanding, caring but not questioning. Yeah, pretty much. And when that didn't work, she tried the speech about not owing explanations, hoping you'd either start a fight or back down completely. Instead, I just left. Instead, you just left. And she completely lost her shit because that wasn't one of the expected responses. Jake told me Briar had been talking about the situation at work constantly, trying to get validation that my response was extreme and emotionally abusive. Most of their coworkers thought the whole thing was drama she'd created for herself. She kept saying you'd abandoned the relationship without trying to work things out, but she'd spent months not working things out while testing whether you'd accept being disrespected. The conversation confirmed what I'd already figured out. This wasn't about Briar needing independence or space. This was about establishing a relationship dynamic where she could do whatever she wanted while I provided emotional and financial stability without expecting reciprocal consideration. The overnight stays were deliberate provocations designed to train me to accept uncertainty as normal. The explanation refusal was designed to establish that her autonomy mattered more than my peace of mind. And my previous acceptance of this dynamic had apparently convinced her she could push further. What she didn't expect was for me to actually take her words at face value and apply them consistently. Jake finished by saying, I think she thought you'd either get controlling, which would make you the bad guy, or get desperate, which would prove how much you needed her. You just followed her logic, and that broke her whole framework. I thanked Jake for the honesty and went back to my apartment, where I made coffee on my balcony and thought about relationship dynamics. Here's what I've learned. Some people create tests instead of partnerships. They manufacture conflict to establish power dynamics. They use independence rhetoric to justify inconsiderate behavior while expecting traditional